What is going on, beautiful people? We're back once again. Your boy, Akeem Robinson, sitting alongside Amy G. And we are so excited to present to you MMO, the podcast. Amy G, how you feeling out there?
I'm feeling great. Happy to be with you all. Thanks for tuning in. I was thinking, I feel like I've been feeling content, like happy with where I'm at. I've just been kind of thinking about what the difference is between like contentment and complacency and where I kind of sit between the two.
Well, it's so funny because it's like I really thought contentment and complacency were not that far off. I really did not think they were complete opposite end of the spectrum. I thought when you thought of contentment, it was like, I'm feeling okay. It's not that bad. And then when I thought of complacency, I thought it was the same thing. I'm not feeling that bad. But in reality, contentment is a state of happiness and satisfaction, and complacency is a feeling of smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one achievement. And that blew me away. You know what I mean?
And I thought that exactly what you said. I thought that they weren't that far off, but I was thinking, contentment, if you ride that too long, it could turn to complacency if you're not being intentional about it.
And that's the crazy part. I feel like, like our achievements are things we strive for. Like, I want this. I want to obtain this job. I want this salary. I want this thing. And in a lot of situations, we get very close, if not do it. And then when we do it, it's like, yeah, and we feel really good. And then a year goes by, 2 years goes by. And, it's funny because one thing that me and Allison love to do, she loves watching her little trashy TV shows. So we've been watching little Love is Blind. And it's crazy because like in 1 second, they're like, you're my person. I love you. You're so awesome. And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, I can't do this. This is awful. It's so crazy, just like you said, to ride that wave of such a high. And then like that, the same thing you just said, that's your person you're now complacent with. I found that to be like just mind blowing. Like, how can it change so quickly? And you know what I mean? Like, how can it just shift from this end to this end? And like, that's the place I think a lot of people kind of find themselves. But I think we give it the wrong definition, something that we become complacent in, we're like, oh no, this is good. I'm okay. But in reality, are you,
If you're content with what you're doing, you are like grateful, you're checking in with yourself, you notice like, oh my gosh, it's taken me this far to get to where I am today. And so it's like, I think what could help is, yes, getting from when you're in contentment, I feel like you have a fresh new challenge, you're acknowledging the accomplishments that got you to where you are today. And complacency, you've been there for so long, and yes, you're grateful, but I think there's a challenge missing.
There should be an acknowledgement of where you are. There should be a point to be able to reflect and say, wow, look at all of this that God has allowed me to accomplish. Jesus has put before me and blessed me with, or put me an opportunity to do. And that should be celebrated, and that should be acknowledged and thankful for. But then you're right. On the other end of the spectrum, we do have to look at it and say, is this the fulfillment of what I've been sent here to do? Is this the fulfillment of like how I'm feeling? And you're right. It comes back to checking in to say, where am I on the spectrum? Allison and I say, I'll talk to each other all the time. Like, we have to continue to fall in love with each other every day. If we don't, it can get bad real quick,
Right.
It can get bad real quick because think about it. Like if I told Allison, when we got married, I love you. And she's sitting here like, oh my gosh, thank you. That's so sweet. And I didn't tell her that for months. She is not feeling the same kind of love, even though I said it. I meant it, but she could easily go from contentment from when I said it to complacency because she's like, I don't know if he feels the same. I don't know if we're still in the same place as a couple. I don't know if we're still in the same place of how we share this space. And so you're right. I have to constantly check in with her to see if she's in the right space, because if she's not, we have to work on that. If I'm not, we have to work on that. And that just starts with that, just a simple check-in and a question. And from there, you can find out which direction you're either going or which direction you've continued to head in whether you knew it or not.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how, because I'm not married, so any single boys who out there, just hit me up. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm joking. But you and Allison are married. How do you try to not take each other for granted? Because I know that we get comfortable, whether that's friendships, significant others. Like, what are some practices that you try to be intentional about?
Ooh, shoot. Ooh, boy. Well, let me tell you something. So naturally, yeah, both of us can become complacent. We can kind of look at something as this is just who they are. You just take it for granted. This is what they're supposed to do. And next thing you know, you get into a routine. Oh my goodness. You want to try your best to avoid the routine because you have to. So I would say, when it comes to me and Allison, which might sound weird, is allow that person's gifts to shine. I'm going to say that one more time. Allow that person's gifts to shine. It's so crazy. We had this conversation. We were having this conversation actually this week. So she came up to me and she said, "Hey babe, I was thinking." And it was like, I was like, oh shoot. She had that tone. Like I was thinking, and it was getting lower and I was like, oh boy, it's about to go down. And so I was like, okay. So she was like, I want to have this celebration for someone that I really care about. I want to help pay for it. And I was like, okay. And she was like, but it might cost a little bit. And I was like, oh, that's fine. And she was like, that's it? And I said, yeah. And I said, well, if you want to do this, then we're going to have to start putting money away. And then she's like, then she goes, is it crazy to do that? And I said, yes. She said, she was like, no, seriously, is it really crazy and irresponsible? I said, yes, it is. And I said, but that's if we didn't talk about it. And I say that to say, after I said all that to her, I looked her in the eyes and said, the thing I love about you the most is God always puts on your heart, he wants you to give. Because when you give, that's how you bless people. And I said, when it comes to him, he tells you to give in abundance and you do that. And so when you brought this conversation to me, I'm not going to stop God's mercy and his shine that he wants to put on people by hindering the gifts he has in you. I know one of her spiritual gifts is to give. Mm-hmm. So why would I stop her giving? No. And I actually thanked her and said, no, because you want to give, you wanted to give a little, but he is the authority of us to say, no, give what you have. It goes back to the story of the woman with the oil, and he's told the woman with the oil, give the oil. And he never said, like, don't give it, even though she was poor. He never said, I only use this much. He's like, nah, give me the oil.
I love that story. That story has literally gotten me through teaching classes when I'm on empty. Like, I'm so happy that you related to that story, because you can give what you have. And I saw this picture the other day and it was 40%. Like, oh, I feel at 40%. But if you give 100% of that 40%, you're giving 100% effort.
Yes. When you look at your partner and like what you said, it's like the best thing I would suggest is learn your partner's gifts. Because like that's the reason you're with them. You're with them because they do something, but you together are like a team. And so you have a gift, they have a gift. So realize and utilize that person's gifts. And so for me, the other cool thing about Allison's gifts are they get me out of my comfort zone. You know what I mean? Because here's my wife saying, I want to give. Who am I to be like, no, we need the money, we got a little one, we got this, we got that. And I'm stunting her gift. I'm stunting what the Lord said and put on our heart to do. And then on top of that, in a way, I'm kind of like hoarding things. You know what I mean? Like I'm hoarding the money and like, no, we need it. And like, it got me out of my comfort zone to say, okay, we're going to figure it out. So now it's like, it tests us to see like, how are we going to love each other through this? How are we going to be patient with each other through this? How are we going to maneuver through this now season of doing that? And it continues to make our relationship flourish, because it's not being complacent, because we have to be content with what we have. Like we could easily go out and be like, oh, I want to buy this, but we can't now because we want to celebrate this person. So we have to be content with what we have because of what he's put on my wife, Allison's heart. And so that's one of the first things I would suggest is like, understand your partner's gifts. And once you understand their gifts, you then can allow them to pull you out of comfort zones and pull you in a situation where y'all can learn to be content with with what you have, even though it might not seem like a lot, or even though it might not seem like it makes sense, you still can love each other through that.
Thanks for sharing. That's so good. As I was listening to you talk, I was just thinking like that's compromise, and neither one of you are trying to change how you guys are. You just are allowing each other to, ebb and flow. Like, because that's why, the Lord put you two together, because he sees how both of your strengths can complement each other. So thank you for sharing that, because that's very powerful. And now to all of you guys listening, reflecting on what your gift is, like what do you bring to the table? Because that's definitely what I also was doing, is like, oh, like what do I bring to the table? What is something that, how does the Lord shine through me? So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and it's so cool because you just said it right. You said, "What are my gifts?" And most of the time, what we do is we try to like ask ourselves, like, "What is my gift? What is my gift?" And like I heard this in church not too long ago. He said, "Ask the people that you spend time with." His service was, "Ask the people that you spend the time with, what am I always saying?" He said, because what I'm always saying is probably potentially what I'm always doing. He said, like, what am I always doing? And what am I always saying? And so like, to one of the other ways you can learn about your gifts is like, ask your friends, like your circle. When I'm around you, what am I always saying? What am I always doing? And that will help you kind of like get closer to understanding what your gift is, understanding like what you, I don't want to say like bring to the table, like you have to bring something, but just kind of know like who I am as a person, and then see if that will work and complement with the person that you're involved with, your family and so forth, because it does help. And like when you go back to looking at contentment and complacency, it's kind of crazy, because I'm very, like, my friends tell me all the time, hey man, you don't play, like you're very strict. Hey man, you're very straightforward. You're very matter of fact. And so it was cool because, again, Allison's like, do you think that's crazy? And without a hesitation, I was like, yes. Like, yes, it is. But again, she knows that about me, and she gives me the space to say that. She knows where I'm coming from. So instead of me being like, oh, no, babe, that's not crazy at all. No, yes, it is. You know what I mean? Yes, it's wild. But she gave me the space to say that. It frees me. It feels freeing for me to be who I am. And she's still who she is, like you said, and we can still move on. And now we're still doing this thing, and we're still excited about it and making it work. And so that's, to me, the thing, like understanding your partner's gifts. And then when it comes to your gifts, ask your friends, ask your circle, like, what am I always doing? What do you think are my gifts? Because they'll help you, because they see you and they analyze you more than you think. But we a lot of times don't spend asking those kind of questions. It's more like, hey, where you want to go eat? Hey, what you got going on today? Hey, what's this? And hey, what's that? I will also say that if you don't have those kind of friends that you can ask that level of a question, you might want to start finding those friends where you can ask that kind of level of a question, because that might also be an indicator of you living in a place of complacency if you don't even feel like you have those kind of friends where you can ask that question. I think we get caught up in understanding that, like, they're like, oh, that's my friend. And so if that's your friend, then it's not a problem to just go up and say, hey, what am I always doing? And you want the truth. Hey, what am I always saying? And they might ask for a little bit of clarity. And you're like, no, like, when I'm around you, what am I always trying to get us to do? What am I always trying to do? And they'll help you get closer to understanding what your spiritual gift is. And if you don't, you might want to look at that. But it's so funny, Amy G, because like I feel like in my world, right, I've been a coach for so long. I am constantly seeing people, hearing people fight to stay in the realm of complacency. Think about that. I'm constantly fighting people that want to stay in this realm. And I'm like, no. There's a whole nother place over here. Not only can we get there, but when you become content, I'm going to try to push you out of that again. I'm always trying to tell people, hey, put this on. Hey, do this. Hey, run this. Hey, eat less. This, that. And it's always constantly making them be like, I don't know if that's me. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And so that's my realm.
Every time I have a new person come to my studio, oh my gosh. Look, I'm speaking things into existence. Who knows? One day I'm going to have my own studio. To the space that I teach, every time I see someone new, I like to come up to them and like, because I don't know if they've done yoga before or not, but I always ask, hey, welcome to my class. Is this your first time? And they're like, yeah. And they'll usually, they might tell me if they're nervous or not or whatever. But my biggest thing is I want to make people feel, which is ironic because I want them to show up as they are. I was going to say I want them to feel comfortable, because because that space, yoga, I feel like you're there because your mat is a mirror and you just show up exactly as you are. And it's like I'm guiding the whole time, but you know, you always have the freedom to get into a child's pose, or so I'm constantly telling people to come back to their breath, but it's crazy because I don't know what their internal experience is, you know? So it's like where I feel like where you're coaching, you get to have those conversations and they could tell you like, oh, this. I don't really have a feedback throughout class. I mean, I do because they're either doing what I'm saying or they're not. It's hard for me to kind of get that feedback if it's usually after class. So after class, they would just say, oh, thank you so much. That was really, really hard, but you know, I'll be back again. I guess for me, I try to provide a space that is safe, welcoming for people to show up, whatever that looks like in their internal world, whether they're anxious, sad, mad, happy. They have the freedom to just be and just come back to the most simplistic thing they can, which is your breath, and to just do what I say. So like,
think about that. Like, man, Amy, that was so well said. The difference between contentment and complacency is a provided space of comfort within your environment. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about that for a second. So if you're in a place that is not challenging you and you're still there, you might be actually pushing yourself more towards complacency. If you're in a space that's actually pushing you, telling you to kind of get out, it's like the grind, and it's like I gotta fight, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. Guess what you're doing? You're pushing yourself into an environment that's uncomfortable. And then once you get there, then you're trying to seek that contentment. But until then, you're grinding, you're pushing. And it's so cool because for you don't have the in time real feedback. So what you're doing is you're trying to provide a space that allows them to maneuver themselves through that and kind of feel where they are within that. And for me, when I speak to somebody before I tell them like, hey, put this on, or like, hey, we're gonna do this, or hey, we're gonna do that, or when I speak to crowds or whatever in public speaking, like I'm always trying to get people to challenge their environment. And so in both of those, we're trying to just get you to reflect on what's your environment doing for you. And when you look at it, your environment will shape you. You know what I mean? Because we are constantly putting ourselves there. It goes back to the whole goldfish in the bowl analogy, or the plant in the vase analogy, right? Like the plant and the goldfish only grow so much to the confines of their area. If you put them in a bigger area, guess what? It's more challenging. Guess what? They have more space, they have more freedom, but they're trying to discover more. We're no different. So you have to constantly put yourself in bigger spaces. But in order to do that, it's risky, it's scary, it's unknown, and contentment is in there. But you got to go through all those stages first. It's like that's the crazy part. You got to go through all those stages. It's like when you were just learning yoga and you knew you wanted to teach, you still ain't teaching the level 500 classes because you can't even do those moves yet. And so you're teaching this move and you're like sweating, dripping, and you're like, okay, I got it. And then next thing you know, when you're teaching the class, you're like, it worked. And you're like, that wasn't bad. And I feel like people are no different. We have to put ourselves in those environments. And it goes back to what you said earlier, like how does Allison and I do that? For me, if it was just me, honestly, I wouldn't put myself in that environment. That's why I love Allison so much, because she forces us to go in that environment. She pushes us in that environment. And when we go there, it's uncertain, it's wild, it's unknown, but we know contentment is in there. We just have to find it. We have to seek it out, and God says that in his word. God says that in his word. He doesn't say like, I'm just going to let you figure, I'm just going to like give you this easy path. He goes, seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door will be answered. Like, you have to do it. Like, but in order for you to do it, you have to put yourself in that space, and it's bigger and wider all the time.
You know, it's so funny because you said that contentment's on the other side of pushing through. And that's so true, because like every time, we do something uncomfortable, it's scary, but I always like to say it's the buildup. It doesn't exist until you're actually in it. And then it's actually not that bad. So it's like that. I always tell myself, it's just the buildup. It's just the buildup. But then once I'm there, I'm pushing through. And then you have so much like joy. And it's that reward of like doing something hard and then seeing how strong and like how expansive you actually are. So I
No,
challenge all of you guys to do something uncomfortable this week.
you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed by just challenging yourself what that looks like, because the cool thing about challenging yourself is it doesn't have to be this earth shattering, this like monumental type of move. It can just be something as simple as I'm going to go to bed sooner. It can be something as simple as
I
I'm going
choose
to
oh,
no
I was
go.
gonna say I was gonna say it could be as simple as choosing the juice over the coffee, and don't slam me for that.
No, and exactly. And a simple change can lead to a life transforming change. A different word can lead to just different ways to speak to yourself. And so when we talk about contentment and complacency, like I am telling you, like both of us were baffled because we thought they were like cousins. We thought they were best friends. We thought they were like, oh man, I'm content, I'm complacent. Like I really did not think they were so far off on the spectrum of one being satisfied and one being not satisfied with your achievements completely. Most of the time, we don't even know we're digging ourselves in that hole. We don't even know we're doing that to ourselves. So me and Allison, we our little one Serena, she's like 9 months, and in the beginning it was crazy. In the beginning I thought to myself, I'm gonna be that husband. I was like, I'm gonna do these dishes, I'm gonna do these clothes. Like she ain't gonna want nothing, she ain't gonna want to trip on nothing. And like here I am doing it and doing it and doing it. And next thing I know, I was happy about doing that. And then I was content with doing that. And next thing I know, I was like, why am I always doing these dishes? Why am I always doing these clothes? I started looking at those things that I wanted to do to help her differently, just like that. And then go ahead. What you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say, and it's the same thing with things that we love sometimes. Like, even, like the things that we're passionate about, we could easily, like, flip a switch about them because, like, I'm sure singers or, when I was a soccer player, and I'm sure when you played football, like, there were times where I was like, dude, I hate this. Like, I just can't, and it's like, I still had to power through. I wanted to finish my degree and I wanted to finish all these things, but, what is that perseverance that keeps us going? And I think it flipping the script in your head, like what you were saying, like checking in and going back to, I don't have to look at it this way.
Not only do you not have to look at it that way, it's different because it doesn't have to be like that. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be like that. And like checking in with yourself, checking in with a person you're sharing space with can let you know that, hey, am I in the right headspace? Because then the funny part about that story is, come to find out, she ain't want none of that. She ain't want none of that. She ain't care about the dishes. She ain't care about the laundry. She was like, man, help with this baby. And I was like, oh, I thought I was. And she was like, not like that. Like I would prefer you do these things, but I never asked. So here I am thinking, oh man, we're killing it. We're doing great. We're doing all these good things. And then even in that, I got complacent. She got frustrated. And next thing I know, we're like at each other, and I'm like, what's happening? And because I never asked.
It's funny because I got my degree in communication studies, and in my master's I had a bunch of family communication, interpersonal communication. So all these things, it just goes back to like, I get slammed for getting a communication degree, but I'm like, come on, like we're literally doing this all the time. Like, what do you mean this is the best degree to have? Like, but yeah, going back to your point, is communication is key, but sometimes it's like you can't prep for every single scenario. It just is gonna come up in the moment, and you won't. That's the point of like constantly trying to learn about one another and being open to having conversations. They're not scary, they're not bad, we're not targeting each other. It's you and Allison against the problem. It's not you versus Allison.
Another thing for you guys listening out there, please understand, like her biggest fear about telling me was she didn't want to hurt my feelings.
I feel that.
She didn't want to hurt my feelings. And so in her not telling me, I continue to put us in the bad situation. In me not asking, I continue to put us in the bad situation. So you have two people sharing a space, an environment that we think it's okay, but we're actually going in a direction that's not helping that environment grow and flourish. and challenge us. We're actually putting ourselves in an environment where we're shrinking ourselves because we're not talking. We're not making adjustments. We're not on the same page. And it all could have started with her bringing it up or me asking. And so when you think about complacency and contentment, it's just literally a start of a question, and you can really analyze what environment you're putting yourself in. You know, to your point, when you think about communication, I say communication has been around since the beginning of time and we're still not good at it. You know what I mean? Like, it has been around since the beginning of time and we're still not good at it. And so when you're with someone, understand that they have their own thoughts, they have their own beliefs, they have their own feelings, and y'all might not agree sometimes. Y'all might have disagreements sometimes, but if you are both okay with saying sorry, giving grace, and trying to understand that we're in this together, we're not against each other, we're not enemies, we're on the same team. And if you can understand that and accept that both the people or whoever can work towards that, then you actually work towards understanding where you are. And then if you're content, you find a new environment to be uncertain, unsure, unaware, and then you grow and find more to find contentment again. That's how it works. You know what I mean? But I never thought of it like that.
If you're by yourself and you're having these feelings, you know, you don't have say it's not necessarily with your significant other or in a relationship. Like, if you're individually feeling this way with your job or with workouts, or maybe it's even your routine of your day to day, I just want to challenge you to ask yourself, what is something that isn't working here? Like, what is something that I haven't done recently to help me feel a certain way about what I'm going through? For me, I am someone who needs to look back and give myself praise for all the things that I have gone through, because sometimes I'm like, go, 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 next thing, you know, next accomplishment, next goal. I'm a grinder. I grind. I'm trying to do it all. But to be honest, what I'm learning is to just slow down. And that's where the grace and the accomplishments and the progress, that's where I see my growth. And that's where I can, you know, find joy. That change of, not everything has to change in your day to day, but just how you talk to yourself could change, which makes you feel differently about what you're doing again. Re-sparking that passion, re-sparking that why, and then you kind of drift from complacency back into that contentment, but just finding a balance of like challenging yourself again, putting in new stuff. So I just want to give you guys some hope and to keep plugging away.
By yourself, whether you're with someone, you can always check in. And that was so well said, Amy. And again, we want you to continue to tune in, continue to like just give us a quick listen, man, because we just want you to think differently. Don't have to think like us, but we just want you to think differently. And we always enjoy this time with you and having you just put you in a space where you're like, I never thought about that.
And if you ever have any questions or a topic you want to talk about, feel free to shoot us a message on Instagram and let us know what you're thinking. We're always happy to digest that.
Yes, beautiful people. And again, tune in. We love you. We appreciate you. And we want to make your environments bigger. We want to make your environments more uncomfortable, because once you do that, you can be content in where you are, because that is who you are. And then when you do that, you're going to grow again. So we appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thank you for the time.